this wonderful mural of Pablo Neruda I recently found on the side of the Port Vashon building, right at the foot of the ferry. It's a delightful surprise. You're invited to look closely and see that all of the shading is made by words on the page. As you move up the ferry to the east side of the highway, you'll encounter the lovely little community of Dolphin Point. Quirky signs, cute beach homes, always access to the beach. You can see the waves, hear the waves, and if you're lucky, you can even see an orca, a pod of orcas swimming by. And this is where our island author, Betty McDonald, spent some years with her family, and she wrote a book called Onions in the Stew, which was written about life on Vashon Island in the mid-1940s. This is now a bed and breakfast. If you go on the west side of Vashon Highway, you'll get up to Vashon Heights. You can see some peekaboo views of the Olympics and the Southworth ferry over there in Kitsap Peninsula in the foreground. There's such an assortment of houses. I love the purple painted, the lavender house, which is just a rainbow of wonderful colors and imagination. There's modern boxy things. There's even some farmyard. This is where the Vashon Mori Grange Hall is, near the upper parking lot. And there's unique little libraries of books and mailboxes and all sorts of things to explore in these neighborhoods. So take a bike, which is challenging because it's very hilly here, or a nice long walk to explore these island neighborhoods. You have to go a little farther if you want to get to the Glen Acres and Dilworth area, but also a lovely loop walk. If you can get down to the beach, you can enjoy miles of beach by yourself. I happened to be visiting Dilworth when there was a cougar on the island, and I was told that shortly after I left the beach, the cougar walked right past. His quirky mailbox holders and interesting storage for boats and curious furry neighbors. This is a story by Brian Brenno, a fourth-generation islander, a historian and an author and an artist. I took a walk today in one of my favorite places on Vashon, Upper Shingle Mill Creek Trail. Once you enter the ravine, you are taken back in time. As usual, I was reminded of the following passage from my grandfather's journal. Quote, "I can remember going to Sunday school. Believe it or not, I did. I don't know if it did me any good or not. Mel, Flo, and I would go through Cedarhurst and walk the beach to Colvos, hoping the tide wasn't in. The Colvos church and home again. That was a day's work. No road at that time." Unquote. When I walk the Shingle Trail, I imagine my grandpa heading west from the family house on the north side of Landy's Corner, following Needle Creek down to where it meets Shingle Mill Creek, and then following it to the beach, most likely nearly the same route as the current Shingle Mill Creek Trail. I think Native peoples have a cool way of naming places that reflected what went on there, old-time lore and personal experiences. That's how I feel about many places on Vashon. Shingle Mill Creek Trail would be place my grandpa walked that takes me back in time. So we're not going to walk the beach, but we'll take the West Side Highway to the Colvos area. There is agricultural happening here. You can see old barns, you can see sheep, all sorts of lovely farmhouses. There are two historic buildings, the old Colvos store, which was the store for a large Scandinavian community that was here in the early 20s, and the Lutheran church, was built about a decade before that, and the view to the Olympics at sunset are incomparable. If you move a little farther south, here's the former Colvos Church, where Grandpa Brenno would walk, built in the early 1900s and with a working bell tower. Before you get there, if you go on Crescent Road, you can see the former Mission Society Church. This was built in the 1920s and it's just wonderfully maintained. Moving slightly farther south, see if you can find your way to the Cove Apartments, which was the former Cove Motel, store, and post office, and were one of the stopping areas for the mosquito fleet. So I have a lovely story here by Nicholas Molvik, an island visitor since the 1930s. During the decade from 1938 to 48, this city kid had the luxury of grandparents Alfred and Stina Edwards living on a small farm overlooking the Cove dock, with the frequent arrival of the Virginia Five. Typically on holidays and vacations, we relaxed in the familiar and casual farm lifestyle with fruit trees and chickens and cows. I even learned to milk Grandma's cows. Being sent down to the little store and post office for errands involved meeting friends and family. Grandmother would often have me purchase some little item as well as pick up the mail. The perilous vertical path down the cliff was a challenge, and sometimes I would muddy my shoes and occasionally the bottom of my pants. But it was all part of the adventure. 70 years later, the memories are still comfortably enjoyable.